There is a part of you that you do not know. A hidden self that lives beneath your carefully constructed identity. A darker voice beneath your moral opinions, your social mask, your daily routines, and your polite smiles. Most people spend their entire lives running from it. They bury it under distractions, morality, ambition, religion, entertainment, and endless noise. But no matter how far they run, it follows them quietly, patiently, like a shadow at sunset. Carl Jung believed that this hidden part of the human psyche is not merely a flaw in our character. It is one of the most powerful forces shaping human behavior. He called it the shadow. And according to Jung, the greatest danger in life is not the darkness outside of us, but the darkness we refuse to see within ourselves. Jung was not trying to frighten people. He was trying to wake them up. Because the person who refuses to confront their shadow does not become pure or good. They become blind. And blindness is far more dangerous than darkness. Carl Jung was born in Switzerland in 1875 into a deeply religious family. From early age, he felt divided between two worlds. One part of him was rational, scientific, and grounded in reality. The other part was mysterious, symbolic, spiritual, and drawn toward the hidden depths of the human soul. This inner conflict would define his life's work. As a young psychiatrist, Jung became fascinated by dreams, myths, symbols, and the strange irrational forces controlling human beings. He worked briefly with Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis. At first, Freud saw Jung as his intellectual successor. But eventually, the two men split apart. Freud believed human beings were primarily driven by repressed sexual desires. Jung believed the psyche was much larger, deeper, and more spiritual than Freud imagined. Jung saw the human mind as a vast inner world filled with hidden archetypes, ancient instincts, forgotten wounds, and symbolic patterns inherited across generations. And among all these forces, one stood out as especially dangerous and transformative: the shadow. The shadow is everything you reject about yourself. Every trait, desire, impulse, emotion, or weakness that your conscious identity refuses to accept becomes buried in the unconscious mind. Anger, envy, hatred, lust, cowardice, violence, selfishness, but also creativity, ambition, passion, and power. The shadow is not only evil. It is everything hidden. As children, we quickly learn which parts of ourselves are acceptable and which are not. We learn that certain emotions make people uncomfortable. Certain desires are judged. Certain thoughts are shameful. So we begin constructing a social mask, a personality designed to gain approval and avoid rejection. Jung called this mask the persona. The persona is the version of yourself you show to the world. It is your public identity. The polite employee. The disciplined student. The kind friend. The confident leader. But beneath the persona, the rejected parts of yourself continue to exist. They do not disappear. They sink into the unconscious where they grow stronger in darkness. And this is Jung's terrifying insight: what you suppress does not vanish. It returns in distorted forms. The person who denies their anger becomes passive-aggressive. The person who denies their selfishness secretly manipulates others while believing themselves morally superior. The person who suppresses desire becomes obsessed with controlling others. The person who refuses to acknowledge their capacity for cruelty may become dangerously self-righteous. The shadow leaks out unconsciously. History is filled with examples. Some of the cruelest movements in history were led by people convinced of their own righteousness. Jung saw how ordinary individuals could commit terrible acts while believing they were serving justice, morality, or progress. Evil rarely appears wearing the face of evil. It often appears wearing the mask of virtue. This is why Jung believed self-knowledge is one of the highest forms of responsibility. If you refuse to confront your own aggression, you will project it onto others. Projection is one of Jung's most important ideas. It means that the qualities we cannot accept in ourselves are often seen most clearly in other people. The traits you hate most in others may reveal hidden truths about yourself. The arrogant person who constantly accuses others of arrogance. The dishonest person obsessed with exposing lies. The controlling person condemning everyone else's need for power. We see externally what we refuse to recognize internally. Projection allows people to avoid responsibility for their inner world. Instead of confronting their own darkness, they create enemies onto whom they can dump their unconscious fears and desires. Entire societies do this. Nations project evil onto rival nations. Political groups project corruption onto opponents. Religions project sin onto outsiders. Individuals project insecurity onto strangers. Jung understood that much of human conflict is psychological projection on a massive scale. And because the shadow remains unconscious, it feels completely justified. This is why Jung warned that the most dangerous person is not the one aware of their darkness, but the one convinced they have none. The individual who confronts their shadow becomes more conscious, more balanced, and less likely to harm others unconsciously. But the individual who represses their darkness becomes fragmented. Their hidden impulses begin controlling them from beneath awareness. Jung believed modern society encourages this fragmentation. Civilization rewards conformity, performance, and image. People become obsessed with appearing successful, moral, attractive, and socially acceptable. But the more energy spent maintaining the persona, the more disconnected people become from their authentic selves. And eventually, the repressed shadow demands attention. Sometimes it appears through anxiety. Sometimes through rage. Sometimes through addiction, depression, or destructive behavior. Jung saw many psychological breakdowns not as signs of madness, but as the psyche's desperate attempt to restore balance. The soul cannot survive permanent self-rejection. One of Jung's most radical ideas was that becoming whole does not mean eliminating darkness. It means integrating it consciously. This process, which Jung called individuation, is the lifelong journey of becoming fully human. Not perfect. Whole. To integrate the shadow means acknowledging your capacity for both good and evil. It means recognizing your jealousy without becoming consumed by it. Admitting your aggression without acting destructively. Accepting your flaws without self-hatred. It means becoming honest about who you are. This is difficult because people desperately want certainty about themselves. They want to believe they are entirely good, rational, and virtuous. But Jung shattered this comforting illusion. Human beings are contradictions. We contain compassion and cruelty, courage and fear, wisdom and stupidity simultaneously. Maturity begins when we stop dividing the world into pure heroes and pure villains. Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That sentence alone contains the heart of his philosophy. Modern culture often sells self-improvement as positivity. Think positive. Speak positive. Focus only on light and success. But Jung believed forced positivity can become another form of denial. If you refuse to acknowledge pain, fear, anger, and chaos within yourself, they do not disappear. They grow stronger underground. The shadow becomes especially dangerous when combined with power. A person disconnected from their shadow may seek domination to compensate for hidden weakness. They may crave admiration to escape inner emptiness. They may pursue control because they fear their own chaos. Jung believed many leaders throughout history were driven not by wisdom, but by unconscious psychological wounds. And the frightening part is that society often rewards this behavior. People are drawn to certainty, confidence, strong identities. But Jung understood that those who appear strongest externally are sometimes the most fragmented internally. The refusal to face oneself creates monsters. But Jung's work was never hopeless. In fact, it was deeply optimistic. Because he believed that confronting the shadow leads not to destruction, but transformation. Inside the shadow are buried parts of your vitality. Many people suppress not only darkness, but strength. They hide ambition because they fear judgment. They suppress creativity because they fear failure. They reject passion because they fear vulnerability. The shadow contains rejected life energy. This is why confronting it can feel liberating. The person who integrates their shadow becomes more authentic, less performative, less easily manipulated. They stop pretending to be morally perfect and start becoming psychologically honest. And psychological honesty creates inner freedom. Jung believed that much of modern unhappiness comes from living divided against ourselves. People wear masks for so long that they forget who they are beneath them. They become strangers to their own souls. The modern world intensifies this problem through social media, consumer culture, and constant performance. People curate identities instead of developing character. They display happiness instead of seeking meaning. They chase validation while avoiding self-confrontation. But no amount of external approval can silence the unconscious forever. Eventually, every human being encounters their shadow. Sometimes through heartbreak. Sometimes through failure. Sometimes through betrayal or suffering. In moments of crisis, the persona cracks, and hidden truths emerge. People discover rage they never knew they carried. Fear they never admitted. Desires they spent years denying. Jung believed these moments, painful as they are, contain the possibility of awakening. Because the collapse of illusion creates the opportunity for self-knowledge. The individual who dares to examine their darkness gains something rare: humility. Not fake humility. Real humility. The understanding that we are all flawed, all conflicted, all capable of both beauty and destruction. This realization softens judgment. It reduces hatred. It creates compassion rooted not in innocence, but in awareness. Jung did not believe human beings become dangerous because they are evil by nature. He believed they become dangerous because they remain unconscious. The unconscious person is easily manipulated. Easily controlled by fear, ideology, resentment, and tribal identity. But the conscious individual becomes harder to deceive because they recognize these same forces within themselves. To know your shadow is to become less controlled by it. This is why Jung's ideas remain so powerful today. We live in an age obsessed with external identity but terrified of inner examination. People want quick answers, simple labels, and moral certainty. But Jung forces us into complexity. He reminds us that self-knowledge is uncomfortable, messy, and never fully complete. And yet it is necessary. Without it, people spend their lives blaming the world for problems rooted partly within themselves. They seek enemies instead of understanding. They chase perfection instead of integration. But the human soul does not need perfection. It needs wholeness. The goal is not to destroy the shadow. The goal is to bring light to it. Imagine a society where people understood this. Where individuals acknowledged their own capacity for aggression before condemning others. Where leaders confronted their psychological wounds instead of projecting them onto entire nations. Where people sought understanding instead of moral superiority. Jung believed inner transformation shapes outer reality. A civilization filled with unconscious individuals becomes chaotic, divided, and easily manipulated. But individuals willing to confront themselves create the possibility for wisdom. This confrontation is not comfortable. It requires courage to face truths about yourself that threaten your identity. It requires honesty to admit envy, selfishness, weakness, and fear. But according to Jung, this painful honesty is the beginning of genuine freedom. Because the greatest prison is not external oppression. It is unconsciousness. The person who refuses to know themselves becomes a puppet of hidden forces. Their fears make decisions for them. Their wounds shape relationships. Their repressed emotions distort perception. They believe they are free while remaining controlled by what they refuse to see. Jung's message is ultimately a call to awaken. To stop running from darkness. To stop pretending perfection. To stop projecting evil exclusively onto others while ignoring it within ourselves. The shadow is not proof that you are broken. It is proof that you are human. And perhaps the deepest wisdom Jung offered is this: the path to becoming fully human does not lead away from darkness, but through it. Because only the person willing to face their inner chaos can develop genuine strength. Only the person who acknowledges their capacity for evil can consciously choose good. Only the person who descends into the depths of their own psyche can emerge with true self-knowledge. And maybe that is the real tragedy of modern life. Not that people are flawed, but that so many spend their entire lives hiding from themselves. Carl Jung understood that the shadow will follow you whether you acknowledge it or not. Ignore it, and it controls you from darkness. Face it, and it becomes a source of wisdom, balance, and transformation. The choice is terrifying because it demands responsibility. Once you become conscious of your darkness, you can no longer pretend innocence. But you also gain something extraordinary, the possibility of becoming whole. Not perfect. Not pure. But real. And in a world built on masks, illusions, and performance, becoming real may be the most revolutionary act of all.